a German soldier came in and they wanted the radios, they wanted this, that, and that was right at the very, very beginning. My grandmother just could not understand it. To her, it was unheard of. She said, what's happening? I mean, in German and so on. She said, I am German. She felt she was educated as a German. And the answer to that was in impeccable German, naturally, which I understood, that if a donkey is born in a stable with purebred horses, it remains a donkey.
Hello, my name is Mark Olien. I've worked in the area of oral history for some time. Today I wish to discuss Holocaust testimonies like Rena's that you just saw, and why such eyewitness accounts have become absolutely vital to our understanding of history. As I've gone through my life, I sometimes didn't realize when something relatively important was going on, usually until much later. Back in 2010, something like that happened at the Congress of the Humanities and Social Sciences at Concordia University. There was an incident there that I found oddly instructive. We were in a very large classroom, and a young academic was presenting a paper about the Babi Yar massacre of September 1941 in Ukraine, in which 33,000 Jews died by bullets. When she started describing exactly what the eyewitnesses to this massacre reported, she suffered an emotional reaction and began weeping. For a few seconds, I could not process what I was looking at. I'd never seen an academic crying before during a presentation. I could tell that some people in the audience felt that her reaction was somehow unprofessional, but I felt differently. I recall thinking that her response was the proper one. Those in the audience were so inured, they could not be disturbed by anything, no matter how upsetting or grotesque. But then I wondered, why don't we feel something like outrage or extreme sorrow when we hear about the murder of innocent people? I promptly forgot all about that incident, but I was reminded of it once again when I read a weird statistic in a 2019 biomathematical study from researchers in Tel Aviv and Melbourne. They found that during September, October, and November 1942, a period of only 90 days, the Nazis managed to murder 1.32 million human beings, civilians, as part of Operation Reinhardt. This is said to be the all-time record for genocide, the ferocity of which has yet to be equaled. This is a truly stunning amount of murder accomplished rapidly, yet somehow, upon reading it, I had no reaction at all. I wondered why. Was there something wrong with me? In a way, perhaps, but it has to do with how the human mind conceives tragedy. Statistics, even shocking ones, are about groups. Groups are not individuals, and we interact individually generally. Eyewitnesses, however, are real, and you can talk and interact with them. It struck me that in the matter of the Holocaust, ideally, a person has to react viscerally at first before they can engage with the topic intellectually. This is where archives enter the picture. In a sense, testimony provides a human face to the matter under discussion, which is genocide. Otherwise, it's just more statistics. The crimes committed were against individuals, first and foremost. It's only when one reads the history that the collective comes into play. Ideally, first-person narratives help put the viewer directly into the middle of things.
I remember one incident. A wagon was going by a truck, but on a slow pace, and with two German soldiers sitting in the front. We were hungry, and I told you before, when one is hungry, you could smell food from far away. We felt that there's something to eat on this truck. The truck was covered. So we ran over, and we took away the cover, and we saw the truck was full of bread. People started to grab. So one soldier said to the other one, "Why don't you shoot? Why don't you do something?" And this I heard. He said, "I'm afraid." when I heard he's afraid, so I felt that something changed. And I took my whatever I could and went back to the gang. And believe you me, it didn't take long, and the whole truck of bread was gone.
That incident occurred in the day or two prior to Israel B's liberation in Germany while on a forced march from Sachsenhausen concentration camp. It was early May 1945. Israel notices that the guards are no longer behaving with impunity toward the prisoners. This kind of vivid eyewitnessing truly gives you a sense of having been there. It is important to keep in mind while watching a testimony that survival itself is a statistical anomaly. There is only one purpose for a prisoner being shipped to a concentration camp: to die, either by being worked to death, disease, starvation, or outright murder. No prisoner really had any way to determine whether or not they would ultimately survive. It was entirely random. Sadly, even after the war, survivors were kept at arm's length, at least in our society, largely on the outside looking in. People wondered, how had they survived? Of course, many wanted to tell their stories, but most did not. In Canada, the survivors who were interviewed report over and over that Canadians initially did not want to hear anything about the horrors in Europe. The advent of testimony after many years changed this. People felt freer to share their stories. A testimony can be revealing insofar as it deals with people at their most vulnerable. It brings out the individual and it evokes memory. We cannot help noticing the uniqueness of each of the stories. There are so many different twists and turns. Also, there is the survivor's use of language to describe what happened, the insights that they have into life in general, and of course, survivor narratives inevitably raise moral questions about what the viewer would have done if they were in the survivor's place. It's always fascinating to see which experiences a survivor will choose to recount. Sometimes it's different than you might expect. Rena was born in Poland and relates her experiences through the eyes of the child whom she once was. She recalls what happened the day a German soldier entered her family's home in Krakow to confiscate the family's radio, and her grandmother confronts the man. What happens next is a good indicator of what is about to befall both Rena's family and Poland.
And a German soldier came in and they wanted the radios, they wanted this, that, and that was right at the very, very beginning. My grandmother just could not understand it. To her, it was unheard of. She said, what's happening? I mean, in German and so on. She said, I am German. She felt she was educated as a German. And the answer to that was in impeccable German, naturally, which I understood, that if a donkey is born in a stable with purebred horses, it remains a donkey. Now, anybody, in my mind, comparing my grandmother to a donkey was something that I could neither envision nor even in the wildest dream sort of comprehend. To me, it was something that wasn't happening. It was somebody that was totally uneducated, stupid, barbarian.
What was her reaction?
She couldn't comprehend it neither. She was totally, totally speechless. She could not comprehend that anybody who was in his probably early 20s or something like this could answer a woman what Europeans have the reverence for age. I don't have to describe it. I mean, there was, if an older person came into the room, I would automatically stand up. Manners demanded it. There was no such a thing that my grandmother would come into the room and I wouldn't stand up because she came in. And whether I would run and hug her afterwards or something of this idea, yes. But the respect was there.
The memories of what was done to her grandmother and family run throughout and define her testimony. Rena was so young when she lived through all these things. It is hard to overestimate the impact such incidents must have had on her life. In the end, survivors like Rena came forward to give their testimonies because they were concerned about the rise of denial and they wanted to personally combat it. In addition, many others wanted the historical record to be more accurate and to relate their own story rather than risk it being lost to history. This is very fortunate for us since it is hard to connect to things, to feel anything, unless it has a human dimension. And the survivors are certainly that, if nothing else. In the end, they wanted us to preserve their experiences and to learn from them. It can be very difficult to hear the descriptions of what they lived through, as with the academic moved to tears at Concordia, but what survivors wanted was to finally be heard. Listening to them and learning from them seems the very least we can do. Thank you for watching.